Hey guys, welcome to Amity Tracks. Say a few words here on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the class of 2024. Now, I always find it more exciting when they announce the nominees, because that's when you can get into all the debates, who deserves it, who doesn't, who's still left out, all the hand wringing and railing against the hall and all that, which I greatly enjoy myself. But we have come to the point where they tallied all the votes and we do have a class of 2024. So let's kind of talk about who got in, who didn't. And honestly, for me, the biggest surprises, and some of them very nice surprises, were kind of in these other side categories that they kind of have these special committees that do that pick these things where they don't have kind of the whole voting body. But of course, it's the performer category that's the primary thing people focus on. So let's start with that. Talk about who got in and who didn't. Again, I'm always a little surprised. But the actual class of 2024 in the main performer category, Mary J. Blige, which I don't listen to her at all, but I know enough about her to know I think she's very deserving, a pioneer in her genre, as well as for women. Cher. Yeah, yeah. Dave Matthews Band. Eh. Now, I was actually a big Dave Matthews fan in the 90s when they first kind of hit, those first few albums. Really liked it. And I still think, I don't know, my favorite Dave Matthews Band album is still Crash. I think Crash is a really good record. But, I saw them a few times in the 90s. Definitely appreciate the kind of, expansive jam band ethic. I always like improvisation. I don't know. I really, since the '90s, I haven't been a huge fan, but the musicianship I can appreciate. Foreigner, that's cool. They've I think they've gone through like the big, obvious ones from the classic rock era. Um, Although, as usual, at the end of the episode, I'll quickly list off some snubs that I think are ridiculous. So yeah, they've missed a few of them. But I don't know. I don't mind Foreigner. It doesn't bother me that they're in. I do kind of see them as kind of second tier though in that genre. But I don't know, huge success, great songs. Peter Frampton, I'm glad to see. I like Peter Frampton. Cool in the Gang. Cool in the Gang has been a snub that I've brought up for quite a while. It's kind of crazy that they weren't in already. Ozzy Osbourne, another big snub on my, it's been on my list for years. Of course, he's already been inducted with Black Sabbath, but this is his second induction, and this is for his solo career, a welcome induction. And then A Tribe Called Quest, who I think are very, very talented. If you're going to argue about whether hip hop and all that kind of related music deserves to be in or not, that horse has left the barn. So, but Tribe Called Quest is a very innovative and I think very talented group in the genre. So those are the performers. Notably, Sinead O'Connor did not make it in, although she was nominated. I think she'll get in eventually. I was surprised she didn't make it in. Usually the death, the celebrity death, and we'll talk about another one in one of these side categories in a minute. Um, I don't know. I thought her death and the outpouring related to that would have pushed her in. Oasis, you know, as many people that love Oasis, there's a big backlash. I mean, the guys are kind of douchebags. Um, some would say very derivative. Although I think also some good music from Oasis. Yeah, they might get in eventually. Lenny Kravitz, whom I like, but I'm glad he didn't get in, at least on a first nomination. Um, I don't, if you look at the criteria of, you know, how you're supposed to get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I don't see much innovation. I don't see much influence. I guess musical quality. Yeah, he's good. I like Lenny Kravitz. I enjoy some of his music. I just don't see him as one of these, hall worthy transformative figures. And Mariah Carey, who I don't know, I guess I was a little surprised. I mean, Whitney Houston is in, so why not Mariah Carey? But not a big fan either, so I'm not not losing sleep that Mariah Carey didn't make it this time around. So yeah, so that's the performer category. For me, it was these side categories that really kind of gave me probably the most surprises, and many of them good surprises. Let's just talk about the biggest surprise for me is Jimmy Buffett. Now, Jimmy Buffett has long been on my snub list. Yeah, I think he should have been in the Hall of Fame a long time ago. I'm a moderate fan. I'm not a huge fan. I like some of his music, but I'm not a. I have that 4 disc uh, CD set of his. Just kind of covers most of the ground: boats, beaches, bars, and whatever. You know? But I've always argued, anyone who kind of creates this whole subculture, like the Grateful Dead and the Deadheads, and you got Jimmy Buffett and the Parrot Heads, and creates this whole kind of lifestyle. I mean, that's a lot of cultural influence. I've always argued, and so I've always thought Jimmy Buffett should be. I think it's crazy. This, I mean, I'm glad he's in. This kind of bothers me that they sort of side doored him in, um, with the musical excellence category, which they've been using lately. And I kind of approve of how they've been using this in the recent years to get in some artists who haven't been able to kind of capture the vote, but who are very much deserving and influential, like Kraftwerk a few years ago, one of the most influential groups ever, if you're going to look at today's musical landscape. And but just not enough name recognition and whatever for the average voters. You know the you know the I don't know, because you have music insiders, you have music critics. I mean, as far as the people that vote. So also, I don't know if you know, but all past inductees who are still alive obviously have a vote as well. But anyway, using it for that, where someone like Kraftwerk definitely should be in as an influence or excellence or whatever you want to call it, the side category. That's fine. Jimmy Buffett, though, Jimmy Buffett has never been nominated, like in the performer category. If they would just nominate him, I think he would have gotten in legitimately through the performer category easily. But it's kind of weird that he never even got the nomination. They just sort of got him in through the side door of the musical excellence category. Um, like Sinead O'Connor, he died this last year, so that's probably probably what got him through that way. But I just don't think they needed to do that, with him. Now MC5 also got in through the musical excellence category. They've been trying to get them in for I don't know how many times they've nominated MC5, 4 or 5 times. I don't know. Haven't gotten the votes. I appreciate the MC5, but I don't know how hall worthy they are. Dionne Warwick, I think she had been nominated a couple times. They just got her in that way. And Norman Whitfield, which I was glad to see. Hugely important songwriter. Wrote a ton of Motown hits, especially for the Temptations. I was kind of just reading about him. Yeah, I mean, it's at least half of the Temptations' big hits were written by Norman Whitfield. So, I always want to give credit to a lot of those guys, songwriters and producers, people kind of behind the scenes who don't get all the glory but have a huge influence. Then there is the musical influence side category. Alexis Corner, one of the founding fathers of British blues. You look at the people that went through his band in the early part of all these people's career, like Jack Bruce, Ginger Baker, Charlie Watts. Most of the rest of the Stones played briefly with Alexis Corner. Jimmy Page also performed with his group early on. So that's super cool to see him. And then, a similar guy also got in on the music influence, who's been sort of this seen as almost like an apprenticeship, going through his band. That's John Mayall. Now, John Mayall, great performer in his own right, but you think of the Blues Breakers of Eric Clapton and John McVie was in the Blues Breakers, and then finally, musical influence, Big Mama Thornton. which is great. I keep bringing in those kind of old influential blues artists, and they sort of predate rock and roll that had a huge influence. Definitely keep bringing those in. Um, one other person, the in the non-performer category, where they usually bring in important producers or record label executives or important critics and that kind of thing. Suzanne de Pass, I think I'm saying that right. Um, didn't know much about her at all, but I read about her. She's a key figure at Motown, also very influential TV and movie producer, often movies and TV shows, kind of music related. So that's cool. That's cool. So anyway, that's the class of 2024. Big class. I like the bigger classes because they still have some catching up to do on some of these. So, what are your thoughts? I I know a lot of people totally dismiss the Hall of Fame. I don't. I don't just. I'm as critical as anybody on kind of how they've run things and how they've set things up. Um, I like the idea of it though. Maybe it's my history background combining. Kind of I like to look at sort of the history of the music and all that. So I do like the principle and idea of it, even if hadn't been executed well, in a lot of the years. Um, but whenever I talk about the Hall of Fame, I always wrap up with who's still not in. You don't have King Crimson, Motorhead, Thin Lizzy, Jethro Tull, Joy Division, New Order, The Smiths, to name a few. There's still a lot of work to do. Well, anyway, in the comments, go ahead and let loose. What do you guys think? What do you guys think of these inductees? Talk about the hall in general. Talk about who's not in, the snubs. Let's just one more time talk about the Hall of Fame, and then we'll move on to something else next time. Well, thanks for watching, guys. Please do subscribe to the channel. Really helps us out. Like the videos, share the videos, all that stuff. And we'll see you next time on Amity Tracks.